Hello pilots, this is Craig Gamma with Paraglider Service USA, and today we're going to go over loosening stubborn paraglider line knots. There's a few different knots that are used for the brake handles at the main brake lines. For example, Jin has a knot that they use that's, let me see if I can bring it up on my phone here, if you can see it. That's from Jin. And that's what we have here. And this one, when you get it really tight, it's pretty difficult to undo. Another one that's really difficult to undo is the one that UP has on their user manuals. And what it is on the standing part of the line, they put a overhand knot. That's this one right here, and then they take the running end, run it through the handle, and then run it through the eye of the overhand knot, and then they just make an overhand knot above it. It's also known as the fisherman's knot, and then you'll cinch that down, and then when you pull the running part, it runs right into it. And when that cinches up, that gets really tight as well, very hard to undo. My number one tool for loosening paraglider line knots are my fingernails. My thumb and my middle finger, my thumb and index finger. I'll just grab the knots on either side and just wiggle them back and forth to loosen them up. And that's my first go-to. The best knot I find out there is the bowline for securing toggles. Nova uses it, Ozone uses it, and Advance uses it. And so here's your typical Nova. They kind of modify it. Instead of having the tail go to the inside of the knot, they have it go to the outside, but it's still the bowline. And then when you cinch that up, it's always recommended you have a safety knot, which is just a typical overhand knot, slid right up to it. That way it won't creep when it's not loaded, like so. And that's, I think, the best securing method out there, because these, no matter how tight you get them, you can easily undo them with your fingernails, just wiggling back and forth. Of course, there's different types of paraglider line that are used for main brake lines. The best one out there, I feel, is, in my humble opinion, is the one that's chosen by Ozone, and that's this line right here. It's the Eldoride 10 series, 200 kilogram, and they have it, they come in this color as well as red and other colors, but it's designed to go through the pulleys, to take the abrasion of the pulleys, and it has a softer feel to it, and it resists abrasion better than your typical sheathed Dyneema lines, like the PPSL series that you see here. It's just a hardier braid on the polyester sheath than on the PPSL series or PPSLS series. So that's my recommendation for the knot to be owned. But when I get gliders in for service, I get the variety of different knots used. So I run across some that are really difficult to take apart. And so if I can't get it with my fingernail scenario, then I'll go ahead and I have this is called a dead blow mallet. It's a rubber, and I'll just give the knot a smack with this. I won't do it with sheath aramid, but I'll do it with the sheath Dyneema. And then I'll go with the fingernail scenario. If that doesn't work, then I'll work with I have these two non-marring pliers. It's nylon blocks, and then they're kind of slippery, so I've put some shrink tubing over the outside of them so they stick better. And I'll grab one side of the knot with one end, and then I'll grab the other side of the knot with the other end and do the same thing I do with my fingernails, and just wiggle them back and forth until it breaks it loose. And if that doesn't work because the line is too narrow, a thinner series of line, then I'll go to the needle nose pliers. These are metal, but they have the shrink tubing on them so that it doesn't damage the polyester sheath. And if for some reason that these don't work, then I'll go to using these metal fine point needle nose pliers. I've sanded the edges so that there's no burrs on it, there's no sharp points, it's all rounded, and then there's no grooves in the This is a smooth, flat surface. This is for electrical wiring bending. It's made by Klein, and this works really well for the really hard to get lines. You know, when you get the line-to-line connections that are Lyros DC series, DC 35, DC 40 kilogram, DC 60 kilogram, like this. You know, these knots are been, you know, they've did a lot of towing or acro, and these things are so secure that, you know, I can't even get both my fingernails up to them. I can get one on one side, but I can't get the other side. And so what I'll do in that case is I'll use these little ones here and then get the other side and grab it, and then I'll wiggle them loose that way. And that works really well. You just got to be careful because it is metal. And what I do is I have some optics called oroscoptics that give me 4 times the normal magnification, so I can see the minutest things when I'm trying to break, you know, knots that are this tiny. And then you get the aramid that's connected to the Dyneema, unsheathed aramid to unsheathed Dyneema, and that's not so much of a problem because the aramid's a little more easier to grab. A lot of times you can just, because the slipperiness of Dyneema, you can just push them up and then they'll come apart. But if they've been heavily loaded, you know, it'll be a little maybe more difficult. And but it's not as difficult as when you got 2 aramid together or two Dyneema together, especially 2 thin. You know, this aramid, unsheathed aramid, comes in 25 kilogram, 0.25 millimeters in diameter, and this, it's smaller than this one that we're showing here. And when those two get together and get loaded, it can be pretty difficult to get them apart. But this works like a charm with the fingernail on one end and this on the other end. And I'm sure you have some methods yourself that you're using. Please feel free to share them, because I'm always open to learn more and make things a little easier. But I just wanted to share what I find useful for myself. There's times where I'll use this pick tool. It has a very sharp point. It's metal, so you got to be careful. And I'll use this if there's a hole I can get it through without scraping the polyester sheath. And that way I can push it through on the smooth shank of it and widen up the hole. But it's only if I have a minute hole that I can get the point through without scratching the polyester sheath. I'll go that route. And there's another time I'll use metal when one of these seem to be working. I have this screwdriver here that has rounded edges and it's a rounded tip, and I'll use this to pry sometimes. But these 2 here are last resorts, because everything else here is less likely to damage the sheath, and they work 99.9% of the time anyhow. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Please share your ideas as well. Thank you much for listening. Take care.